Welcome to Imperial Interlude, where we discuss all things from a galaxy far, far away. With me is Ralph. Hello, Ralph.
Hi Tim, how are you doing?
Thank you, I'm very fine. I've got myself a cup of coffee because my voice was leaving me today, and I hope we will make this through the day.
Oh, well, hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be all good, and we can have some really interesting discussions about a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, we will start our little podcast by discussing weekly episodes of The Mandalorian. The current season 2 has just started. Would you like to give the audience a short recap for season 1? But before we start, warning, spoilers. If you haven't seen the episode 1 of season 2, don't listen to this podcast. If you haven't seen season 1 of The Mandalorian, don't listen to this podcast. We will not restrain ourselves from spoilers. We have seen the episodes and we will talk in length about them. So, with that out of the way, would you kindly do a short recap of season 1, The Mandalorian? What is it?
The Mandalorian is set... It's between 5 and 9 years after the Battle of Endor, so it's the fall of the Empire. And it follows a character called Din Djarin, which you don't actually find out his name until very late in the season. And he's a Mandalorian. He's a bounty hunter, so along the similar lines to Boba Fett and all the other bounty hunters that you see in Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. And it's his journey initially. It's about him. By the end of the season 1, it sort of changes slightly, but that's sort of jumping ahead a little bit, and I'm just trying to remember it because it has been a little while since I watched it. So if I get anything wrong, shoot me. So it starts off with him on it's an undisclosed planet, and that's right, isn't it, Tim? The very first planet he sort of he appears on the snow planet. It's never mentioned.
No, it's not. And there he's basically just a run-of-the-mill bounty hunter, getting someone caught up, put him into stasis fields, and then flying off.
Pretty much. And then he's given he lands on the planet Navarro, which is where you introduce to the lead of the guild on that planet, a character called Grief Karga, played by the wonderful Carl Weathers.
The Headhunter Guild, that is, so...
Yes. Definitely. Who then, after Din asks for have he got any more jobs, he's given this job to go and see a character called the Client. The Client gives him a mission to go to another undisclosed planet, because I don't think it's ever mentioned, to retrieve something for them. He lands on that planet. He heads off after finding out that the Client has some stormtroopers with him, and this leads into Bigger Rock later on as well, of course, or bigger stormtroopers.
I think it's safe to say that the Client is an ex-Imperial military.
Yes, it's not really said, is it?
No, he's given no title, but the way he's talking to his stormtroopers and the way he talks to the Mandalorian is very much from way up above.
Yeah, definitely some sort of ranked Imperial, whether it be a government official or something, maybe maybe an ex-Moff. We really have no clue. So Din heads to this planet where he encounters a Ugnaught, which is quite interesting.
With a very catchy catchphrase.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember what it's.
I have spoken.
I can't remember his name. This has been bugging me for a couple of days because I'm
sure the audience will be screaming now. We will not lock it up now. We will just wing it.
Yeah, we'll just wing it. It's much easier that way. So he encounters the Ugnaught, who's voiced by, what's interesting is that's Nick Nolte voicing him.
Oh, I didn't notice.
Yeah, that was Nick Nolte voicing the Ugnaught. So the Ugnaught leads him to the area he wants to go. Riding some blurgs, as they're called, which are the beasts that they seem to be riding, which is a throwback to another piece of old Star Wars history. But from that, the Mandalorian oversees this compound where the object or whatever it is that he's wanting to hunt or retrieve is. There's pirates there, and then walking up the middle is an IG droid. which
is
was just
another
insane.
official bounty hunter that's there on business, and they join forces to get into this very weird outpost.
And then at the end, they at the end of the first episode, they are then find the object, and the object is actually a baby. The object is, and the IG droid wants to kill it, and ends up getting shot in the head for its trouble from Din Djarin. And when you see the baby, of course, it looks exactly like Yoda.
Yeah, everybody knows Baby Yoda by now.
And that's where the Baby Yoda comes from. I think that sort of took the internet plus Star Wars by storm, I think, over the past 12 months. And that's where basically the episode ends. And then it leads the rest of the season, because I think the first episode sort of sets the premise, is he returns to try in the second episode, he encounters some Jawas. And they're not on Tatooine, which is quite interesting. Who demolishes ships, so he has to do something for the Jawas involving getting an egg, and that's where the Mudhorn comes from, which is this looks like a rhinoceros, and Baby Yoda exhibits some force powers with it to help him. He leaves Navarro and ends up that planet, going back to Navarro to hand over the child, and
he doesn't.
I think a pang of conscience, I think. Or he sees something in the child that he sees in himself, because during those sort of first 3 episodes and all the way through the season, he has flashbacks to him as a child.
Yeah, and he's having flashbacks to scenes where his village is attacked by clankers, of all things, and that explains a very high disliking him of droids. So every time a droid nears him, he's automatically in some form of attack pattern, and that only ends with the season a bit.
Yes, it's sort of, it escalates, shall we say, with his dislike of droids.
Yeah.
And he also, during the 3rd episode, you come across a hidden culvert, as it's called, of other Mandalorians, which is quite interesting, because in the sort of the lore that they've laid out in this, definitely in the first few episodes of the first season, they're very rarely seen.
Yeah, but I think at this point you got this a little bit wrong. He doesn't come around, and he knows of their existence, because he quite obviously walks up to them and goes to the smith and says, "Here is my new metal. Make me an armor."
Yeah, they're hidden. They seem to be hidden, don't they? The Mandalorian people, or the Mandalorians, because we've got to remember Mandalore isn't just a people; it's a creed. Depending on which Star Wars you look at, from Clone Wars or
it's more or less something like a religion that originated on one planet, but has ever since included orphans of all kinds and raised them in their belief.
Yeah. So you see more of them, and then there's this cool. Then he goes and rescues the child, and basically demolishes virtually all the stormtroopers he comes across, which is some of the coolest action of him just walking through these stormtroopers to get to the child and then rescuing him. And then, of course, as he does that, the rest of everybody on Navarro that's part of the guild gets a call to basically say he's now got a big price on his head. And there's this huge, great big standoff as he's trying to get to his ship at the end of the third episode, where then it ends up ensuing into a massive gunfight where those hidden Mandalorians come out and help him.
Which
and just
isn't to their very much helping in the long run.
No, but what's interesting is in the episode, the Mandalorian with the big gun. I think his surname's Vizsla. So he's part of the Vizsla clan, which is interesting because pre-Vizsla was the character that held the Darksaber, and we'll talk about that at some point. Was voiced by Jon Favreau as well.
Oh.
So Jon Favreau not only voiced a character on the animated series and is the showrunner for The Mandalorian, but he's also, and a director of it, but he's also the voice of that Mandalorian as well.
Well, I think we see some more people crossing over from other movies and series into
Definitely
this
had been.
one, and I couldn't think of anyone that was too badly shoehorned in.
No, there's been no shoehorning. I don't think they seem to have picked people that suit the role. They've gone out and went for people that they think will do a good job, and and aren't. Oh, this is somebody's face, and I think they'll it's a named person, and we'll get them for that role because they're named, so we'll get the recognition. I think it's more the fact is to pick the people for the roles that they feel bring something to it.
Yeah.
A bit like in the 4th episode where you get to meet Cara Dune or Gina Carraro's character.
Yes,
the
rebel.
rebel shock trooper, and I think she suits that role really well, and she's really good at it.
She's an amazing part in that episode. It's the complete opposite of the damsel in distress, but not so much overdone that she's like anything like Red Sonja or something. She can pull her weight, but she's still very much what do you call it? More emotionally accessible than Mando himself, because he's a very closed can.
Literally. With that armor on.
Yes.
So in the 4th episode, which it's a bit like the Magnificent Seven, but with 2 of them.
Yeah.
That's my sort of analogy when you watch it, where you've got like Gia and the Mandalorian helping this village against some raiders, pirates. It's not really said. I would assume probably pirates or raiders.
I think it was pirates, very much the thing. So some local no goods that somehow acquired a ATST and harassed the villages.
Mm-hmm. So the 4th episode is built around the Mandalorian meeting Gia's character on this planet, and he's going to this planet because it's got no spaceport, it's got no links to the main galaxy, it's off the beaten track, so he doesn't think he's going to be found there.
And that episode has one of the most iconic moments of the series today, where the both main characters are fighting each other because they haven't known each other now, and then lay on the ground on top of each other, and suddenly Baby Yoda stands there beside them, sipping on his cup of whatever.
Spotchka, I think they called it. What was interesting as well is there's when the Mandalorian enters the bar, where he goes and gets the Spotchka and encounters Gia, and then she disappears, thinking he's after her. As the camera pans around, you see a Loth cat.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the anime, which is from Star Wars Rebels, from the planet Lothal. The small cat you see that sort of lying on the ground as Baby Yoda walks past, and I think it hisses at him. It's just these little incidental bits. As a Star Wars fan, you sort of notice and go, ooh, that type of thing. So it's just that. So yeah, the 4th episode is pretty much them helping the planet. It also implies that the Mandalorian was thinking about leaving the child with the village as well, and possibly staying himself. It's not really said whether he would or not. But then a bounty hunter turns up on the planet, and you get the sort of the typical sort of cinema or TV shot of the villain looking through his scope, aiming at the different people. So he aims at the Mandalorian, then switches to the child, and just as you think he's about to shoot, it cuts to the Mandalorian, then you hear this shot go off, and then you find out that Cara Dune had killed the bounty hunter that was after the child in the Mando, so they have to leave the planet, leaving Cara Dune on the planet.
Not for her to be seen again for 1 or 2 episodes, I think.
That was episode 4, and she turns up in 7, so yeah, it's about 2 episodes additional. Episode 5, if I remember correctly, is the episode called Gunslinger, which is set on Tatooine. Which is the Mandalorian, I think, is having at the beginning of the episode they're in a massive there's a space battle. He's being hunted down by another bounty hunter, and there's a fight. There's a ship after him.
I think that he was also pursued by rebels. There were 2 X-wings, or was that another episode?
No, that's the end of the episode. Okay. That's the next episode where the 3 X-wings turn up, which is quite interesting as well. So this one is the Tatooine one, where at the beginning he's being chased by the fighter, and then the ship, the Mando dispatches the fighter, but his ship is really badly damaged, so he ends up going to Tatooine, which is, it's.
Oh yes, and there he lands in a very, let's say, weird landing bay, and there he meets a character named Peli Motto.
Yep.
Which is a bit of a weird character in itself. She's very much a bit like somebody having no sleep for 3 days and on way too much coffee.
Yes. She's a little bit hyper-strung, and that's where you also... she has some of the pit droids.
Yes, from episode 1, and that's one of the scenes where we get to learn again that Mando really does not like any droids, and he forbids her to let the droids do the work on his ship.
So he leaves the ship with the child in, and it goes off to try and find some work to get some money to pay for the repairs. But he leaves, and then it cuts back to that where the child makes an appearance, and this woman sort of falls in love with him and stuff like that. So the Mandalorian goes off to a canteen, which is very reminiscent of the cantina from Mos Eisley. And what's interesting is there's a droid serving, where in the original Star Wars, droids weren't allowed in the cantina.
Yeah, but we had serving droids before.
Just in that one, they were said no droids allowed, didn't need the barman in the original episode of Star Wars, looking for work, and he ends up meeting a member or someone who claims they're part of the guild, who's got this job to hunt down a famous enforcer, assassin, probably bounty hunter called Fennec. Is it Shan? I think it is. It's definitely Fennec is the first name, if I remember correctly.
He was a Twi'lek, if I remember correctly.
Which one?
The one they are set out to liberate.
No, that's episode 6.
Oh, I'm messing up again.
Jumping head in episode.
Yes.
I'm on about Name Weng's character in this one, the female one. Do you remember?
Oh, very, very, very dimly.
Yeah. Name Weng is famous for Disney because she was the voice of Mulan. She also played May in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then she turned up in, of course, The Mandalorian. I might be butchering her name completely, and I do apologize.
Well, that will happen to both of us multiple times, and we say sorry now, and that has to suffice for all upcoming episodes. We can't be bothered by those weird names.
Yes, I run a Star Wars game. I have issues with Star Wars names. I hate name generators for the role playing. It's terrible.
Oh, God, yes.
So yes, he comes across this person who's saying part of the guild and is looking to not to team up so much, but also possibly team up. But it then finds out in the same sort of scene that this is his first job, and he wants to do it to get recognition with the guild. So he's willing to give the Mandalorian all the money.
Now I remember that young one you met.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the Mandalorian tells him, "Have you got a speeder bike? Get some equipment." And he goes back to the ship. That's where he finds out that the child is ran off somewhere, and he comes across the mechanic, the female mechanic, and she's got the child, and they have a little bit of conversation, and she ends up looking after the child as he heads off with this young bounty hunter to go and hunt down the character Fennec, and they travel across the deserts. You come across some Tusken Raiders, which is really cool, especially when the Mandalorian signs with them. So it's making the Tuskens more human.
Yeah, they're not the brutes they've been in episode 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're not portrayed as that, I think, which is interesting, and I think that pulls a little away from is it episode 2 where Anakin goes and kills a bunch of them in the camp?
Yes.
And it sort of pulls away from that because they were just portrayed as these brutes, and they're not. They're not seen as in this show. They're shown with more humanity, shall we say? As one sort of,
they are shown as a tribe that is living in a very hostile world and has some very harsh rules of code. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting take upon.
They get more relatable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. So they interact with some of them, and the Mando gives his binocs off, and then they come across a dewback dragging a dead body, which looks like it's a passenger. The Mandalorian goes and checks to see what's going on and to see if it is Fennec, and it's not. But then he sort of twigs or has a feeling that it's an ambush, and it is. And as the Mandalorian's sprinting back, he gets shot, but it bounces off his armor because the armor is Beskar, and we can cover Beskar probably in a later one because that's
it's not Stormtrooper armor.
definitely not Stormtrooper armor. So at the night time, they decide that what they're going to do is use the speeder bikes and use speed and fire flares and use that as a way of blinding the sight. And they end up, to cut long story short, they end up getting to Fennec, but one of the speeder bikes is destroyed. So the Mandalorian says right, he'll go, and he leaves to go to get the dewback, to go back to Mos Eisley, or whichever. I think it is Mos Eisley. I don't think it's Mos Espa. To get some transport to bring them in. I think that's what there's implying, isn't it? From it, I don't think there's much more than that. And that leaves this young bounty hunter with the character Fennec, and she starts talking to him and mentioning about the child, mentioning that there's a
much larger bounty on the child and the Mandalorian, and she basically tricks him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she sort of try and trick him to get him to release her. He looks like he is going to release her, and then shoots her, leaving the body. And then he races back to Mos Eisley, and I think the Mandalorian turns up, sees she's dead, and then travels to Mos Eisley as well, where this young bounty hunter is waiting for him with the child.
And it ends as one would expect.
Yeah, pretty much.
The greedy youngster gets knocked.
Yes, he doesn't survive the episode, but there is a stinger in that episode which is quite interesting, which is the very last scene after the Mandalorian leaves. He's got the child back. He gives her the mechanic all the coinage that the dead person had, or the gunslinger in the title had. But what's interesting, there's two things in that which is quite amusing. One is she tells the droids to drag it out to the Dune Sea, drag the body out to the Dune Sea. But then, as the Mandalorian leaves, it cuts to the body of Fennec and a cloaked figure, and all you see is the legs walking up to the body.
Which could be hinting to something that we'll get back to in season 2.
We'll get back into season 2 on that one, because I think it does hint to that. And the Mandalorian leaves. The 6th episode, which was the one you're on about with the Twi'lek, is the Mandalorian gets a call to go and meet some of his old, I would say, companions, some of his old gang that he used to run with. I think it's probably the best way of describing them. There's a Twi'lek, a Devaronian, a human, that's and a droid. Now the droid reminds me of 4-LOM.
Yes, that was my thought exactly. I'm guessing it's the same model of semi-protocol droid. Mm-hmm. And he does not do anything much more in this episode than being a pilot.
Yeah. But he goes and meets the boss of his old gang. He's given this job where they needed the ship. Now the ship is the Razor Crest, and it's a very old ship, which is quite interesting. It's pre-Clone Wars, I think they said.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't show up on most databases, and that's what makes it valuable for bounty hunters.
Yeah, so that's the reason he's there. You have in the group there's the Twi'lek, who seems to be very good with knives, probably a killer. You've got the strongman, which is the Devaronian, which was Clancy Brown, which I thought was a great great fun.
Mm.
And then you've got Bill Burr playing the human
Hotshot.
human Imperial sharpshooter.
Yeah.
That's the one with the 3 guns.
The trigger happy one.
Yeah, the trigger happy one. So they are going to basically free a prisoner from a remote ship. By the sounds of the way they describe it, it's
a prison transport.
Yeah. So they head off, and during this time, as they're heading to the ship, they come across the other 3 come across the child and start goading the Mandalorian. Initially, they're goading him about taking his helmet off, which he won't do. And then they discover the child and technically start being a little bit threatening towards the child. And then that's when the droid cuts in and basically doesn't give them any warning about what it's doing in the way of piloting.
Yeah.
And they end up docking against the prison ship. They get onto the prison ship, and a mouse, during them heading to the main control panel, they come across a mouse droid, and of course the Deveronian is making noise about, yeah, mousey, and has got his gun behind his back. And as the mouse droid runs away, he shoots it, and that alerts the security robots. So a little bit of gunfight ensues, but as they look around, the Mandalorian's missing. And they start making comments about him, saying, oh, we thought he was the best. And from behind the droids, he comes and just dispatches these droids in the space of like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's really, really just like bang, but just gone.
It's a bit over the top.
It is a little bit. But I think it was trying to get across in the storytelling beat of how good they supposedly are.
Yeah.
Because it's not really shown, I think, other than possibly the 3rd episode where the Mandalorians all come to his aid, how good they actually are as a collection of fighters.
Yeah, and it's even mentioned in 1 or 2 episodes when somebody says he's a Mandalorian, so you know he's good for killing.
Yeah. So they end up going and getting to the main control area, or the main bridge, where they find a human Republic guard. A standoff ensues, and they end up killing that guard. A little bit of side thing is that guard was played by Matt Lanter. And for Star Wars fans who know, Matt Lanter is the voice of Anakin Skywalker in the Clone Wars.
Oh, so he's dead again.
So he's dead again, yes. So that was who they got to play him. And then they go and find the prisoner they're wanting to free, which happens to be the brother of the Twi'lek, who also ran with the Mandalorian. They then trick the Mandalorian, and he ends up getting put into the cell that he's from. So basically saying that, right, you're going to get what it sounds like he double-crossed them possibly, and for that he was, caught into this little trap, shall we say, that they tried to pull together, and then he escapes, and it becomes a game of cat and mouse, I think, with the other with them.
Yeah, and he picks them off one by one.
Yeah, and then it ends up with the freed Twi'lek brother and the Mandalorian facing off, and he takes them back to the station where they got the mission from. One thing that I forgot to mention was the human guard, the Republic guard, it activated a beacon, which plays into the bit later on.
Yes.
Where the Mandalorian gets paid, and as he's flying away, his old boss says kill him, and they start to launch a gunship. And that's when they find on the brother Twi'lek the beacon. And what they said about the beacon was that the Republic would turn up really rapidly once that beacon's enabled. Yeah. And as the Mandalorian's flying away, 3 X-Wings drop out of hyperspace, past the Razor Crest as they head straight towards the base.
Yeah, and blow it to smithereens. What's most important about this is the 3 pilots. These are very distinct people.
Yeah, one of them happens to be Dave Filoni, who, of course, Star Wars fans know as, shall we say, was nicknamed the Heir Apparent at one point for Lucasfilm. Dave, as we know, created Rebels, Clone Wars, Star Wars Resistance.
For everyone who doesn't recognize the name, it's the shorter dude with a cowboy hat.
Indeed. The other 2 are... Kari Fujinaki, I think it is the African-American gentleman, and he was the director of episode 2. He's a very famous director. And the Asian woman who's the other pilot, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I do apologize, but she directs episode 3, and she's also the showrunner and lead on the Kenobi series that's coming.
So we have 3 very much persons that usually are behind the camera, suddenly sitting stage center in the cockpit of an X-wing, and probably did something they wanted to do from the very start when working on
if you watch
stuff.
The Disney Plus gallery series, which is really good. It's about the making of the first season. They don't, or Dave didn't definitely want to be on camera. He said no. He was getting more and more worked over it because it was Jon Favreau's idea to drag them onto camera, which I thought was quite amusing. Basically, the episode ends with that station being destroyed, and then the Mandalorian going off. But also something else in that episode as well is the droid finds out about the Mando and Baby Yoda.
Yeah.
And the scene with the droid is the droid ends up getting killed by the Mandalorian just as it pulls a gun on Baby Yoda, which is, what happens, I guess. The next 2, I would say, is the 2-part season finale, really. Even though it's 2 separate episodes, it is the series end.
Yeah, it builds up to the big literal shootout on Tatooine.
Sorry, Navarro.
Navarro, yes.
Yeah, so the Mandalorian gets a call from Grief Karga saying it's got worse. The Empire is now running roughshod over them, and he wants the client dead. So come back, and we're going to use you as bait to basically kill the client, as he's called. The Mandalorian decides to bring some help with him, so he travels to the planet from episode 4, and that's where he goes and gets Cara Dune. During his time as they're traveling to Navarro, the child gets in the cockpit and causes mayhem. So he then goes to the planet from episode 1 of the season to get Krill, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Ugnaughts name, and can use him as a babysitter. That's where we also discover that he had resurrected and relearned the IG droid to be a protection droid.
Oh yes, I almost forgot about that. The IG droid now is a proper nanny.
Yeah, it's a nanny droid. So all of these characters end up going to Navarro, where Grief Karga meets them with 2 of members of the guild. And they are traveling across the desert, heading to the main settlement on Navarro. They're attacked by some sort of night creature, like a bat or something.
A very, very large bat.
Yeah, which has some poison on it. It injures Grief Karga, and the child uses a force power. We can assume it's a force power. It's not really said. That to heal him. So as they're about to, just before they get towards the city, Grief Karga turns on his 2 guards because he was actually going to turn on the Mandalorian. So it's a double cross or triple cross.
Really. Stop counting.
Stop counting the number of crosses. And then they enter the city. They meet the client, pretending that they send the Ugnaught back with the child. So they're not taking the child in the city, but they take the empty pram, or the repulsor pram with them. And they meet the client, and during the meeting with the client, the 3 of them, so the Mandalorian, Cara Dune, and Grief Karga, the client gets a call from somebody, but it's not said who.
No.
And then, as they're meeting with him, this call says, get them to open the crate to find out if the child's in there. But as he's about to say that or do that, the entire bar or cantina where they are gets shot to hell. And the camera pans out, and you see a collection of 6 Death Troopers, which I thought was really cool to see the Death Troopers. And then the transport turns up, and a load of and it's not just the Mandalorian and the client and everybody shot. The client's stormtroopers that were there, which looked grungy and grimy.
Yeah, basically everybody inside the building gets holes in them.
Mm-hmm. But then this transport turns up with pristine, clean stormtroopers in their armor, which I think shows that these are still part of the Empire, and the other ones are probably just remnants of the Empire, if you know what I mean. The difference, where these have kept their armors pristine, where these ones hadn't. So I'm wondering if it's like factions within that. It's not really said. And then a TIE fighter lands, and that's where we get to meet at the very end of the episode the villain. I think the series villain, probably the entire Mandalorian story villain. That's a character played by Giancarlo Esposito called Moff Gideon. Now, we don't know his name. I don't think it's mentioned until the 8th episode, but I could be wrong.
I could tell you, but it's pretty made sure for the way he appears on scene that he is calling the shots literally.
Yeah. So the end of the 7th episode is basically Krill riding to get the child back into the Razor Crest where the IG robot is, and him being chased down by two speeder bikes, and it's that sort of speed run, and then it cuts to the Mandalorian on a comlink calling his name, as you see the comlink lying there. You see the body of the Ugnaught there as a speeder bike trooper grabs and picks the child up and puts it on the back of the bike and then speeds off, and that's how it goes to black. And then the 8th episode picks up straight up from that, where you've got the two speeder bike guys waiting outside the city, I think, with the child. And of course the IG droid turns up and asks them to hand over the baby. They don't. They die.
Very quickly.
Very quickly. So the IG droid hops on a speeder bike with the child and blasts into the town, and that's where all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, and at that point, I think the Mando and his crew get underground, meeting with the rest of the remaining Mandalorians, and what is her name again? The blacksmith?
The armorer.
The armorer gives him...
And that's the only one that they meet, because when they go down to find what's gone on, they find a bunch of helmets and an armor, and she's busy melting it to create Beskar to give back to what's called the Foundlings.
Yes.
So we assume that conclave of Mandalorians was wiped out after what had happened, because they showed themselves.
Or at least most of them have. And at that point, she tells Mando that she doesn't know what the little baby is, but she had heard of tales of a race which has been at war with the Mandalorians, but that he would now have the quest to take him back to his own kind.
Yeah.
Which
race
is
of sorcerers is what she says.
Yeah, race of sorcerers. So this is his mission in season 2 upcoming. But just before the episode 8 of the first season ends, there's a lot of Star Warsy shooty and explodey going on.
Exactly. And then they manage to get away and deal with the Empire, and Moff Gideon's TIE crashes, thanks to the help with the Mandalorian and a jetpack. So we get to see the cool jetpack as well again. Yeah,
and I think the very last sequence in that episode is when Mando leaves the planet on the crest with the baby, and then the Moff is cutting himself out of his TIE fighter, where Jawas are crawling around already, using the Darksaber.
Yes,
which is a very, very twisted turn on something that is so much... very much Mandalorian.
Very much Mandalorian. There's a lot of lore into that Darksaber, and I think we could do a whole episode here on just the Darksaber and the history of the Darksaber, and it might be something that we address after season 2 is finished.
If we have the feeling this needs to be addressed because they got it wrong in the series.
Well, there is that. Somehow I don't. Maybe not.
we shall. So this is basically what has happened in the first 8 episodes. Funnily enough, despite being a series, it's not a TV format series, so episodes are always different lengths.
Mhm.
And this is very much true for the first episode of season 2, because that one isn't half an hour or 40 minutes, it's close to an hour. So
It
it's
is.
basically a short movie, more than let's
Mhm.
say an episode pilot.
It was a pleasant surprise, I think, because you look at the running times on season 1, it was like 42, 43, 38, and I think one of them even dropped to just close to 30.
Yeah, I think that
One
was
point there
the
was a couple of
episode where they freed the Twi'lek.
yeah, it seemed short, and I think everybody's used to, from a streaming point of view, especially with the way media is, of hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
So it was a nice thing. But then, of course, we have had season 2 drop.
Yeah.
So
What was your overall impression without giving anything away yet?
I loved it. I thought it just built on the foundations that they have put in place. Because I think there was, in season 1, there was a lot of foundation building. There was a lot of world building.
Yeah.
I think for the characters more than the universe itself. Because Star Wars has 40 plus years history. With it. Not just counting the stuff that's been on film. There's all of that stuff with the books, whether it's pre-Disney or post-Disney books, and the comics and the video games and the role-playing and all that. There is a lot in there that has been built on within that, and it was just nice, I think, from point of view of the first Star Wars TV, proper live-action TV show, to have that foundation of building.
Yeah.
And to use they could have said it, during the rebellion, they could have said it during the Clone Wars, but I think that territory has been covered enough. So I think the period they've picked is a really interesting period.
Yeah, I think the universe is more or less in shambles, and the defeat of the Empire leaves a force vacuum all over the world that have been held under, let's say, military regime ruling is clearly showing. Personally, the first 2 or 3 minutes of the new season, I was a bit annoyed on how they took on things, especially the Gamoran guards in the ring. I think those two are too thin, way too thin. They should have gone for a much chubbier experience. But that has been somehow, maybe intentionally, been a bit, well, I'm not saying bad, but cheesy. And also the scene where he is activating his little darts, and Baby Yoda is shutting his crib because he knows what's going on or what is going to happen. Made me smile, and the episode almost got better and better until that one point where somebody shows up, and I thought, oh no, they didn't. And thankfully they didn't.
Yes, yeah. So what bits shall we address as, I'll reiterate, huge spoiler. So if you haven't watched season 2, episode 1, turn off.
Yes,
If you haven't watched
this is the
season
point.
1, go away. Please, we don't want to spoil it for you.
There will be no holding back after this point, because it's impossible to discuss this episode without giving away information. It's impossible. So,
What shall we address first?
I think that one thing we forgot to mention about the recap on season 1 was his armor that is evolving over time.
Yes, the Beskar.
If you think back to episode 1, he had a silver helmet, and the rest was more or less a very colorful set of worn down armor. And every time he gets back into the forge, he's getting new pieces, and at the end of episode 8 in the season 1, he's got a full silver crested armor with a tricorn on his shoulder. No, not tricorn. What's that beast called again?
Mudhorn.
The Mudhorn, yes. And that's where he's getting a real decent look to himself.
Yeah, it's the Beskar steel. For non-Star Wars fans, Beskar is Mandalorian metal. I think it's even mentioned in canon, Mandalorian metal can actually withstand a lightsaber.
I couldn't tell you, especially it definitely withstands blaster fires because they don't do anything except scratch the paint.
It might be from the what's called the extended universe, but in one of the books, Boba Fett has a Beskar Gam, which is a neck protector, and because he asks for it, because he's going to get some Jedi, because he remembers what happened to his father, because we all know how Jango Fett got beheaded by Mace in the
Jango Fett played by
Tamori Morrison.
I never get that name right. Well, we will hear from him later on. So he's basically still on the lookout for getting the baby back to his people, and he has hints of somebody knowing where other Mandalorians are, and he's walking up to him with this giant fight in the ring, and it's a trap because that guy only wants the armor.
Yeah, and thus a fight ensues in the Star Wars Fight Club, shall we call it?
The indoor sports arena that is guarded by a black-skinned Twi'lek.
Yeah.
And as is to be expected, Mando kicks butt and gets the information he wants. And I really like the way he has a way with words. When the scumbag hanging from the lamp is asking to be not killed by the Mandalorian, and he says, "You're not going to die by my hand." You can take that literally.
Yeah, he's not going to kill him by his hand.
No.
You might get the little beasties that are running around in the shadows to kill him, but it's not going to be by his hand, which is what happened.
Yeah.
He shoots out the light because as he's entering this, the beginning of the episode is actually taken straight from the trailer, which is interesting. And you see basically they're walking through this outskirts of a city with a load of graffiti.
Backyard alleys with dumpster fires and red eyes glowing in the dark and hissing evilly. Did you see the C-3PO graffiti?
I didn't see the C-3PO graffiti, but I was watching, people's reactions and analyzing the episode, and someone pointed out that some of the graffiti looked like Sabine Wren's graffiti from Rebels.
Well, I didn't get that feeling, but at one point there's a pretty clear image of stylized Stormtrooper helmet, and just behind it is a very big-eyed yellow metal head, which can only be
C-3PO.
a C-3PO. I don't think that was intended to be anything else.
Yeah, probably not. So he goes into the Fight Club, and he deals with the Fight Club, and he finds out that this Mandalorian, before killing the upside down gangster, is on Tatooine again. So we're heading back to Tatooine, which is, I saw people complaining when the trailer dropped that, oh, it's Tatooine again, but I think it's it's a planet,
and also it's very much if we go back to the lag we saw when he left Tatooine last time, this will play a role later on. They set it up from very first beginning, and let's face it, Tatooine was the planet where Obi-Wan hid for years. So when he's going after Mandalorians hiding somewhere else, Tatooine seems to be a decent place to hide.
Yeah. It's on the outer rim, supposedly, and things like that. It's just I noticed there was some negativity about it, but it doesn't bother me. I think as well as having, I think, a place of, shall we say, familiarity helps in a lot of the world, because there's still bits of world building going on. And there's still going to be bits of world building.
Even though it's a universe that could be explored, it's a TV series, and you need some places that are consistent to build lore around. And even Star Trek goes back to the same planets every time. It's always Risa, the holiday planet. Like, there's an infinite amount of places where you could go on holiday. No, you got to go to Risa.
Yeah, exactly. So he ends up on Tatooine again. He ends up landing in the same spaceport.
Joining up again with Peli Motto.
Yeah, and this time he actually likes droids.
No, he doesn't like them, but he lets them do their work.
He's tolerant of droids. That's it. Yeah. After IG-11 in the first season, sort of sacrificing themselves to save them.
Yeah, and also these. This was still in the very early part of the episode, and that's what's still where I was thinking, oh god, please don't do this, where the three pit droids were really acting like the Three Stooges. Yes. There's no other way in putting it. Those little guys are the Three Stooges of this series.
Definitely, but what's interesting is that's how the pit droids were in episode 1 as well.
Yes, they were always like that. So
yeah.
I'm quite forgiving for that. And then there's the next flashback. So this episode is littered with flashbacks for the original series. There's a red R5 unit.
Yes.
And it has a very much dysfunctional motivator. There's a very much crap ton coming out of his head. And he's even told, go on quicker, don't make it so slow. It's borderline on cringe.
Yeah, there was some scoring on there as well, wasn't there? It was pretty obvious which R5 that was. It was like, so he finds he asks about a town in Mos Eisley that isn't on any map.
Yeah, and Pelimotto shows him Mos Eisley and Mos Espa on a world map, and then gives him reference to where that little tiny mining town would be in reference. And so he sets off in that old jet bike we have seen him on before,
with the baby on the outside with his looking like a little dog. It's that
it was a happy chappy
dog sticking out his head out of a car. All he needed was the long tongue and the
or maybe some World War I flying glasses.
Yes.
So they arrive in this little mining town, which name escapes me, and he goes off to the bar and asks the barman if he has seen any Mandalorian. And that point was, I think, the tipping point of the episode. Definitely. For me personally, because the barman said, no, we don't have any Mandalorians. I don't know how they look. They look like me. Oh, you mean the Marshal?
Yeah.
And then the Marshal enters the saloon in the best spaghetti western way possible, and we see a very skinny guy wearing a very distinct green and red, though battle-worn Mandalorian armor.
Yes, it was. So we say it was a mic drop moment. It was like, right here, there we go. Let's just lay our cards on the table. Yeah. There you go.
So
enjoy.
Someone walks into the bar wearing the very iconic armor of Boba Fett.
Yes.
Getting himself a drink for the Mandalorian himself because they want to talk about what's what, and he takes off his helmet. And at that point, we knew, okay, this is not Boba Fett.
Now, did you think it was Boba, though, when you first saw
it? I was thinking for a split second it could be Boba Fett really being a very old, damaged man, because, after all, he has been in the Sarlacc. But on second thought, no, that's too skinny. They wouldn't dare to go that route. That would be terrible.
What sort of tweaked it for me was the voice. I recognised the actor straight away.
Well, that's the advantage when you're always listening to things in the original voice. I only know the voiceover, so it's half and half.
Yeah, it's I recognize the actor straight away, but I'd also, as soon as I heard the voice, I recognized, and I went, they've done what? So because it was all these, I think we mentioned on the radio show when we were talking about it with Warren and stuff about rumors and all of that stuff that was done, and this was one of the rumors that came out sort of early in the year about this casting and about who this is.
So the rumor wasn't really wrong, but it wasn't right.
Yeah, it wasn't incorrect. It was just where I think people thought this was going to appear. So the character reveals himself, and it's a character called Cobb Vanth. Now, if anybody who's listening has read the Aftermath novel, they will understand, because that's where the character's from.
So I haven't.
So it's exactly as was portrayed in the episode. He was a slave. There was two characters though. There was Cobb Vanth and somebody else, and I can't remember the name of the other somebody else. There were slaves. They end up in this town. They end up leaving the town. The town getting taken over, and they end up getting picked up by Jawas, and they fight over the armor. So all of that scene that he shows in flashback about getting the armor from Jawas is correct. It's just they tweaked a bit with him paying for it with those crystals.
Yeah.
So yeah, him and the Mandalorian have a standoff, which is quite interesting.
No, they want to have a standoff. They're
so...
starting a standoff, and then there's a very loud noise. And I think it's the first time ever the Cryo Dragon is actually shown in action.
Yes, it is the first time that we ever see the Krayt Dragon. We in live action, we've seen the skeleton because that's shown in episode 4.
Oh, and we've never seen one. I think, if I'm not totally misheard, they actually use this more or less the same sound of the original from A New Hope when it was released original, and not the digital enhanced crap that came later.
No, they actually did use Alec Guinness's or whatever audio they used from it. They've sort of mentioned, that's been mentioned in a couple of things, that they actually used that for the sound. And then, of course, the town is basically... It reminded me a little bit of Tremors. Do you remember the film where this thing's under the ground and you've got the wave coming off from it, and then it sort of bursts out the ground and devours a bantha, and then disappears off. And then Cobb Vanth, basically the marshal, goes, "We'll work something out."
Yeah.
And what happens basically is the marshal and the Mando join forces to try and destroy the Krayt Dragon. And if they kill the Krayt Dragon, he's going to get the armor as payment.
Yeah, and the marshal knows where the dragon has its lair, and they both make themselves on their way to the lair of the dragon, literally.
Yes, it is the lair of the dragon, isn't it?
And it's at that point we get another flashback. Did you notice?
Would that be Cobb Vanth's speeder bike by any chance?
Oh, I just love that thing. So they basically took one of the pod racers engine pods on and just welded a seat on it. And they even reused the sound.
Yeah, they used it. Was it one of Anakin's?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's the one of Anakin, because of the very distinct two large, let's call it venting things that go on front. So I would have to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure at least the same making.
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious it was a pod racing engine. I just couldn't remember whether it was Annie's or one of the others, because, they all virtually got destroyed, didn't it?
But I'm very sure it was Anakin Skywalker's.
Yeah, so there was that nice little Easter egg as they're riding off, and then they come into a valley, and it was a valley of a canyon, sorry.
Yeah, a canyon.
Where they have a standoff with some hounds.
And didn't they? Let's just. I think we left out one thing here. I think when the Mandalorian was on Tatooine the first time in this episode, he met with some Sand people already before getting to the mining guild.
Yeah, so he comes across them, I think, to get directions to find.
Yeah, and we can see him interacting with them on a very seemingly friendly basis. So jump again, we are in this canyon, and we hear something sounding a bit like the Cryo Dragon, but we have some, let's call them hounds, beasts.
I would say hounds. It's
they look a bit like...
What's interesting is that's a throwback as well to something supposedly, but I'm not sure what. I'll have to look it up. There was some of the readings and stuff, getting ready for just covering this, was seeing what was sort of Easter eggs, and supposedly those hounds are an Easter egg, but I'm not sure. It might be back to episode 2 when Annie goes to the village and you see the sand people with them and stuff like that as domestic animals.
That could very well be.
Might be that.
So the marshal is settling down and is trying to is aiming at these beasts and is preparing to shoot his way out, whilst suddenly the Mandalorian is making very weird guttural voices, and all of a sudden these beasts behave like good little doggos.
Yes, definitely good dogs.
Even with the little tail wiggling part, which somehow annoyed me.
I was just quite amusing that that they went from these angry beasts to Fido,
Yeah,
and then
very,
of
very
course a
much.
collection of sand people turn up as well. So
At
they
least
must
they
be.
didn't lay down and asked for belly scrubs or something.
No, he just scrunched from behind the ears though, didn't he?
Well, and then the owners of these pets arrive, and those are again Sand People. And after a short talk, it is revealed that the Sand People also want the death of the Cryad dragon.
So the Sand People with lead Cobb Vanth and the Mandalorian on Banthas, which I thought was really really cool seeing Banthas, especially that train of Banthas. And did you notice as well they were riding in single file?
Yes, of course they are riding in single file. Why shouldn't they?
Exactly. It's just those I think those nice little tweaks to
Oh,
previous law building is quite good,
also,
So
we should mention this, and I'm guessing I will mention this once or more, twice again in the future. I love the fact that they are using practical effects at almost every turn.
Yeah.
The baby is in animatronics. Most of the other alien visages are somehow molded and animated via animatronics. There is very little CGI used, if possible. Most
Yeah.
CGI I think, is in space, and space is in very short supply.
And the volume, as it's called, which is their digital set,
Yes,
which is amazing. That technology is just game changing in the way that it works. It really is.
yes.
That virtual set stuff's just incredible. So they after a conversation, and it gets heated between Cobb Vanth and the Tuscans because
There
they
has been
raided on.
bad blood in the
Yeah,
past, and he has killed some, and they have killed some of theirs.
yeah.
So,
But the Mandalorian stops it with his flame gauntlet, with his flamethrower.
which is quite a way to end an argument, and then telling them both, if you don't stop arguing, we will not get out of this alive, either of us.
Exactly. But also in that conversation, did you notice the dog eyeing Baby Yoda?
Yes, the licking his face, going, I wonder what this tastes like. Giving back a reference to the first season where Baby Yoda is swallowing little frog-like creatures left,
Yes.
right, and center.
Tastes like chicken, not frog.
Possibly couldn't tell.
But then they go to where the Krayt Dragons lives, which we find out is a deserted Sarlacc pit.
Which we have learned there is no thing as a deserted Sarlacc pit, only
Exactly.
if you eat the Sarlacc.
Correct. And they have a Tuscan lead a Bantha out to
lure the dragon out.
To lure the dragon out. And they lure the dragon out, but the
Bantha survives.
is ignored, and the Krayt Dragon goes straight for the sand person that's running away after he called it.
Yeah,
and just
that's basically because he hasn't read his Dune. He should have he should have alternated his steps so that they wouldn't be so rhythmic.
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf came out and ate him, didn't it?
Did you get any vibes from that cave? I thought it looked very much the same of the one in episode 2 where he fought the beast.
You mean from Attack of the Clones, where?
No, from the Mandalorian season 2 or 3.
Yes, yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, where he fought the Motorn in episode 2.
Yes, I think
just a larger cave, but yes, it was very much.
It was very similar, and I was going so far as to say it was the same cage, but I had to look up again, and no, it only looks bloody similar because it's a hole in the wall.
It is, yes. Yeah, so it's a large hole in a thing. But yeah, it was yeah. So I'd never thought about that, but thinking back on it, definitely reminded me of the Mudhorn fight a bit.
Yeah.
But without of course the do the magic hand thing.
Yes, the do the magic hand thing is a line from the last episode of season 1 where they are in peril and some dude says, "Do the magic hand thing, baby," and the baby waves back, and I thought this was adorable.
just insanely, just. You can see why they didn't want that character. That's why they never sent out or got any press previews of season 1, episode 1.
No, that's very much.
Just in the same with this one as well. Same with season 2, episode 1, or chapter 9, as it's called. There was no press or anything for it before it got released, which I thought was really, really good, because I would have hated this to be spoiled.
Yeah, I think the way Disney is handling this is the way.
Yes, definitely.
Sorry, I had to take that one.
You had to take that one, didn't you? So we discover that the Great Dragon is there, but it's bigger than they thought.
A lot bigger.
A lot bigger than they thought. So the Tuscans with a little skeleton snake probably starts thinking out, and Cobb Vanth goes, "Oh no, that
is that to scale? Yes.
Is that to scale?
I don't think so."
And then you figure out that after the Mandalorian speaking to them has basically volunteered the town that Cobb Vanth is from to help in the destruction of the Great Dragon. So they go back.
At this point, the story is really basically a reskin of every 1940s Western scenario.
Yeah.
The Indians joining forces with the people from the village to defeat the whatever.
Yeah, it was your typical Western, and that's the vibe I got as well, which I was going to mention at the beginning when he rode into town on the speeder bike.
Yes, it's a very, very like nobody riding on a horse.
Yeah, it was the whole like Clint Eastwood, the man with no name, entering the town. It was very much of that vibe, which I think is really good.
And I think this vibe is more or less present in every episode of the series so far, which probably makes it so plausible, because he is the lone rider on himself on a mission.
Yeah. He is that lone gunslinger. He is that lone.
The samurai with a child.
Yes, it's definitely Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah, there's no denying it. If not sculpted after that series, it's at least partially heavily influenced.
Yeah, there's got to be in there with it. So it gets to the point where they basically, the town and the Tuscans join forces, as was said. They lay a trap for the Great Dragon, which is basically mining underneath it, because the Tuscans let them know that the belly is the weak point.
Yeah, and the village is a mining village, so they have an ample supply of high explosives, which get loaded onto bantas, and then there's again a long polonaise of bantas.
Yes, and they lay the trap. They try to they then call out the Great Dragon. It doesn't come out far enough, and then it does come out, but then it spits acid.
Yeah, let's just say the final fight doesn't go as planned, and for the sake of not spoiling too much, in the end, the Mandalorian gets the thing down. But you need to see it to have fun with it. I think we shouldn't be telling about that part too much.
No, not that one. But there is something from that which is a throwback as well. Did you notice the throwback?
The part where they cut up the dragon and found this pearl?
No, not the pearl. It's when he smacks Cobb Vanth on the jetpack.
Yes. Oh, and that goes further even later. So the Cry Dragon is dead. It gets chopped up, and again the wording of the contract the village has done is that the Sand People will not attack the village anymore unless somebody from the village shoots first. So there is some, let's say, loophole for story-wise open, that maybe sometime in the future some poor sorts accidentally kills the Sand People again, and then all goes to shit.
War happens. But then, of course, the Mandalorian loads up a piece of the meat on the back of the speeder. I'm assuming that's to take it back to Mos Eisley to either use as his own supply or to give to.
I think that will be to be sold off to make money, because I'm guessing Cryo Dragon meat will be expensive. And then he loads up the little one too, and then the marshal hands him over the battered remains of the Boba Fett's armor with a hint, and tell your people I didn't damage it.
Yes, I didn't damage that.
Wasn't me.
And then as he's pulling away as well, you get the sand person holding up the pearl.
Yeah.
Which is another Star Wars throwback information one, which is just. I was just sort of reading through what it actually was. It was like, yes, now I remember.
I couldn't
superb.
remember for the life of me. What was it again?
It's right. It's basically a kyber crystal.
Oh yes.
And for Star Wars fans that don't know what a kyber crystal is, why are you listening to us? No, it's basically the thing that could. Part of it is a kyber crystal. In the center of the pearl is a kyber crystal, which is where lightsabers are
It's
powered
the
from.
heart and soul of a lightsaber, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then he's getting on with his speeder bike, driving off through the
Into the sunset.
the double suns, and then there suddenly is the backside.
It cuts to that 6x9 though, which I thought was great.
Yes,
the
very slow. It doesn't
change.
cut. It blends. It's a very subtle going down. The shades come down literally, and then there's this backside of a figure with a Tuscan mace, gaffy stick, and a gun. And then
gun.
And after the Mandalorian has passed him, he turns around, and we see. Oh God, his name again, Mr. Morrison. I'm calling him.
Yes, Tamuri Morrison.
Which as we have stated before, has played Boba Fett. No, Jango Fett in the what's it called?
Episodes 2 and 3.
Prequels. That was the word I was looking for. And because his son Boba is a clone of him, we could very much assume that this battered, more or less old man is actually Boba Fett.
Yes, and I agree with that one.
And I think we're pretty much safe on this one because he is mentioned as Boba Fett on the IMDb webpage for this episode.
Is it actually credited as Fett now? Because I know I've noticed on the web, and I've been watching some people talking about it on YouTube, critiquing the episodes and stuff, and talking about what people what articles are being posted up. And somebody's posted up an article saying that argument against it being Boba, claiming it could be Rex or it could be another clone. But
technically, he could be any clone, but I'm pretty sure that when I've looked this up at IMDb, that he was mentioned as Boba Fett.
Yeah, and I don't think they would put the Easter egg of, well, not so much Easter egg, but have the armor there, and the Cobb Vanth story, which is pretty much the armor and Cobb getting the armor.
Yeah.
Even though it's a couple of chapters, and not very long chapters, I think, in the Aftermath novel. To not have it be Boba. And I think it's a way of, shall we say, redeeming that character in some way, because, let's be honest, he was on screen, I think, for a total of about 8 minutes. No, maybe longer than that. And did absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the character of Fett has got this mythos around it.
I think the Boba Fett as a character was so impressive because he has a very...
the look.
His presence on screen is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
See, he's just standing there, saying nothing, just looking grim and evil, and I think that's what made made him famous within the world. And after that, there's the stories just folded onto him.
Mm-hmm. And then in the EU novels, you had that the trilogy of the Bounty Hunter Wars.
Oh yes, those were nice to read.
Which were really good novels, and there's bits in there I'd like to see them. Hopefully they may use bits of those novels on if they explain his backstory on how he's reappeared, because that would then open up to having other characters from those, like Dengar. And things, because Dengar was involved in those novels and things, so it might be an interesting, take on what is it that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are they, how are they pulling bits? Because they seem to be pulling bits from lots of different areas to bring it into canon.
Yeah, they're surely not leaving anything on the table whatever has been put there somewhere. I've just looked it up. He's credited as Boba
Yeah,
Fett.
I've got it in front of us. And did you notice the other thing as well is the gangster at the beginning that he meets? It's John Leguizamo is the voice of him.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like a who's who of John Favreau's friends.
Maybe they all owed him an act or something, or that was some kind of bet or so.
Well, it was just his voice, not the performance. The performance was somebody else. But yeah, no, John Favreau and John Leguizamo are friends. They did a couple of films together and stuff. So call up your friends and say, do you want to do a bit of Star Wars? Do you want to voice something? It was just thing. But the Tamori Morrison, that's and as soon as I saw the back of him, I was like, they've done it. Because I was of the thing of when they announced like Timothy Olyphant and Tamori Morrison, were coming in back in May when it was leaked by Deadline. It was like, no, because it's not official. None of these leaks from like Variety, Deadline, Entertainment Weekly, yeah, none of that's officially been said. These are all reporters putting out stories, yeah. So how true is it? How true isn't it? Yeah. Until I see something physically from Disney, yeah, I will not believe.
No, it's. I think what we have learned in the past is that you can make hypothesis over hypothesis and get nothing from it but being disappointed because your imagination has run wild with you. If anybody would have said they are doing a Mandalorian season and they are bringing back Boba Fett in some way, I would have been disappointed, to be honest, because I would thought that would have been a too low-hanging fruit. But by establishing the Mandalorian, Mando as he is called over and over again, as a character on his own feet, with his own code of honor, with his own problems and past and probably future, I think getting maybe Boba Fett a star appearance for 1 or 2 episodes, and even being it maybe just some kind of mentor leading the way, I find it's intriguing.
It is, and I think we'll see Boba we'll see him in the next episode. I think that's leading into the next. I'd be surprised if we don't, because of him, of the Mando having the armor on the speeder bike. Yeah.
Though I think if they go the way TV series usually go, the next episode will be a bit of a diversion of that story track, and in the 3rd episode, Boba Fett gets back for somehow.
Yeah,
maybe saves his ass at the end of episode 2 or something.
Does this then leads to the question, because episodes 7 and 8 of the first season, you had him go and get some help.
Yeah,
didn't he? Does this then lead to him possibly going to get some help in episodes at the end of this season, where he goes and gets Cobb Vanth and Boba
possibly
as helpers,
or maybe even finds other friends along the next 6 episodes.
Yeah, well, there is talk of other friends coming in, but that's still rumor. I take that with a pinch of salt. We do know that one person. We don't know which character it is, but we do know that the wrestler Sasha Banks is in an episode because we've seen her. That was the hooded
woman
character you saw in the trailer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this Pelimotto character in the spaceport is getting more screen time as well.
Yeah.
For one reason or another, I can't see them not using her as a plot device.
Yeah, there's the sort of the plot device, but I think it's also having those characters that are, shall we say, quirky and interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they go for more, is the quirky, interesting, not the established characters, but the people that, as Star Wars fans, we would ignore because they're in the background.
Also, these characters are always up for debate, as we have seen with more than one character getting shot and killed without an actual need to the story to have him killed. The this is the way is dead.
Yeah, but then there's also, does this then, coming off the end of this episode with the reveal of Tamori Morrison, does that then key the end of the Gunslinger episode, which was episode 5, with the legs that were seen with Fennec Shan?
Could very well be that he may have at that point taken notice of the Mandalorian for the first time, and then watched his progress and maybe chose to watch him more and maybe deem him worthy of anything. Maybe even go as far as that Boba Fett for some reason tries to get back Darksaber from that Moff. Don't forget the Moff from the last season. He's still out and about.
He's still there.
He still wants. He wants the child for whatever scientific research he has planned for him. And I'm guessing there will be some sinister, dark Jedi power ritual Sith thingy-majig.
Definitely something with the Force there that he wants.
We should never forget that there's the Force as a plot device isn't dead yet in this series, and there is potential to go all the way, very much some weird cloned Emperor somewhere.
I'm hoping they don't do that. But
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't go, because they're not that significant yet, but maybe some scientific installation that is somewhere in some dark place of the universe where they want to get a hold of any Force-sensitive creature like the baby.
Definitely.
But that's speculation.
It is. There's a lot of speculation, I think, and we'll see more of it coming this Friday. I think, it's going to be more and more. The story will be opened up. One thing that I did notice from this episode is I saw a lot of opportunities for the Black Series figures, shall we say. Looks like my Black Series Mandalorian collection may be increasing next year.
Could very much be. So what's your verdict on this first episode of the second season?
I thought it was a great opening. I thought they kept up what they established in the first season, and are just building it on, and they're slowly building it as well, which is great. And I just think they kept that feel. They kept the Star Wars feel, which is what we want from it. And the length was great as well. I thought, being almost like a mini movie in what they were doing with it. So, it wasn't a letdown.
As I said in the beginning, the first half of this episode, I wasn't too sure if this was going to be great. And then it picked up steam, and I'm not going to lie, I had goosebumps all over when they showed Boba Fett. I was totally blown away. Just as the initial showing up of the Marshal laying down the battered helmet of Boba Fett with this very iconic dent in the upper left part of it was more or less well, that's anticlimactic now, is it?
The acid-scarred armor as well, which was really cool.
Yeah, it's so I think if they can keep up the curve of entertainment they started in the first season, this has potential. This has potential for very, very long legs.
Yeah, well, they've already got season 3 starting this thing, so excellent,
Yeah, so I'd say we're almost 1.5 hours in.
Yeah.
We shall call this one a day. I'm pretty sure the next episode will be a bit shorter because we don't need to do a recapture of the first season every time.
No, definitely don't need to do the recapture of the first season every time.
But please, people, bear in mind, this is a spoiler podcast. Next episode will be full of spoilers too, because we will be speaking about this when we both have seen it. Probably more than once.
Yeah.
So how often did you see it?
I've watched it 3 times.
Well, that's 1 time more than I had by my time.
I didn't get to watch it today, but yes. But I did watch it when it dropped in the UK at 7 a.m. So I watched it at 7 a.m. on Friday morning, just before I started work, before I logged in to start work, shall we say, into the current joy.
That's a nice way of getting your cereal down.
It is, definitely.
So, for your time, I thank you, Ralph. For everybody who stayed online and listened to this, I thank you as well. We will wrap this up. We will we will hear you next week again on Imperial Interlude. Have a good one. Bye.